How Jimmy Garoppolo being suspended for the first 2 games of the 2024 season could be a gift for the Silver and Black. That plus a whole lot more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, February 19th, 2024.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, we definitely appreciate that. The show has grown in a major way, over 12,000 subscriptions already for the show. So thank you so much, Raider Nation, for the support. Thank you to my man Ari. Does a great job each and every day, no matter what time it is, making sure we're up on YouTube and we're looking good. So we definitely want to shout him out. Check him out on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. A lot of feedback coming back from Friday's show and all the conversations that we had last week. A lot of it about quarterbacks, but there's a whole lot more coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. Segment number 2, we had an opportunity to catch up with Offensive Coordinator Luke Getsy on Friday by way of Zoom. It wasn't at the Intermountain Health Performance Center, but it was by way of Zoom. Got a few questions in that I wanted to make sure we asked, plus a whole lot more. So we'll get to some of those sound bites coming up in segment number 2 of today's show. You'll hear from Offensive Coordinator Luke Getsy. Here in segment number 1, news and notes as I kind of collected between Friday and today. And please believe there's a lot of them, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. Before we do that, though, I do want to let you know today's show is being brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins, just like that. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I'll tell you a lot more about them later on in the show. Off top, want to shout you out if you're at work or if you're not at work. Today is President's Day, so a lot of folks have today off. It's funny, I'm kind of split. I got the podcast obviously knocked out. Then I don't have my local show today, Raider Nation Radio 920 Unnecessary Roughness, but I do have my show on ESPN tonight on game night. So not quite hitting the trifecta today. Off a little bit, get a little R&R early in the day, and then later on this evening we'll do my show on ESPN. So that's cool. No problem with that. But if you do get the opportunity to get the day off and you can relax and enjoy your family or hang out and, just get a little rest and relaxation, good. Big ups to you. And if you have to go to work, well, that's how it goes sometime. But either way, I want to make sure that you enjoy the day and enjoy the holiday as it is President's Day. Off top, let's go all the way back to Friday. Jimmy Garoppolo was suspended. Adam Schefter tweeted out that he's suspended for the first 2 games for violating the NFL's performance-enhancing substance policy. The policy violation is related to him using a prescribed medication without having a valid therapeutic use exemption. Sources said that the Raiders are expected to release Garoppolo before the 5th day of the new league year in mid-March, when he can earn $11.25 million roster bonus. Garoppolo also has $11.2 million base salary guarantee for the 2024 season that now can be voided because of the suspension. So, in a nutshell, the Raiders are about to receive some extra cap space, and some of Jimmy Garoppolo's contract is going to be voided because he is got popped for this substance abuse policy violation, which I couldn't tell you the last time a quarterback got busted for performance-enhancing drugs, especially a quarterback that didn't play very often like Jimmy G. But okay, I guess the curse was a gift for the Silver and Black. So to do a little bit deep diving, on Friday I had Joel Corey, a former sports agent, who now works for CBS Sports. He's great at this kind of stuff, contract stuff, and just language of the contracts and what it all means when it comes to salary cap. I had him on my radio show just to deep dive a little bit further and explain what's going on with Jimmy G, the contract, and how it can affect the Raiders. So we start off asking about the gift for the Raiders that was received because of the Jimmy G suspension, and then we ask a couple questions about just salary cap in general. So here's Joel Corey from CBS Sports on my radio show on Friday.
Joel, in a nutshell, how big of a gift can this be for the Raiders when they look at their salary cap space?
Oh, that's a huge gift. The Raiders are still in pretty good shape as it is. Depending on where the cap comes in, they're going to have around $35, $36 million. But when they were going to release Jimmy Garoppolo, they were going to most likely use a post-1 designation. He was going to be released before the 5th day of the league year when he had $11.25 million roster bonus due. The $11.25 million was guaranteed, so you were going to have a total of $28 $8.318 million in dead money, a salary cap charge for a player no longer on the roster, versus a $28.517 million cap hit. Using a post-June 1 designation, you can cap it over 2 years, the dead money. It was going to be $15.1517 million in 2024 and $12.801 million in 2025. Now, with the guarantee presumably voiding, you can just take the full dead money now, which would be $17.608 million, take that all now, and he's off the books for 2025. That's a huge gift.
So as far as when it's kind of all said and done and the math is done, it looks like, what, about a $10 million savings when it's all said and done for the Raiders?
Yeah, it'll be about a $10 million savings because the top 51 players count on the cap. He was one of the top 51 in terms of cap numbers. So he's going to come out. Someone else is going to come in. So he's got $11.25 million of his money that you're saving because you're not paying for his guaranteed base salary, but someone else is going to come in at a minimum salary. So, yeah, the net savings will be about $10 million.
What is kind of the difference between the salary cap and the cash in hand as it pertains to teams?
Well, teams have a cash budget and teams have a cap budget. The cash budget typically will be more than the cap for a lot of teams because you're going to have signing bonuses that get paid. Those get prorated over the contract up to a maximum of 5 years. There is a minimum spending requirement. It is 90% of the salary cap in cash over a 3-year period. We just ended the last 3-year period, so we're starting a new one, 2024 through 2026. So you don't have to have a minimum spend this year, but, yeah, the cash budget and the cap are two different things. Most teams don't keep cash and cap the same. The Raiders used to do that under Reggie McKenzie. They wouldn't give out signing bonuses, and their cap and their cash budget were essentially the same. They've kind of gotten away from that under different regimes, but for the most part, you'll see teams have different cash expenditures than their cap charges.
So there you go. In a nutshell, they're probably going to save about $10 million, which is fine. $10 million is really good. Right now, the Raiders are at $35 million in cap space. Basically, when it's all said and done, they could probably get up to around $70 million. And I thought that last little nugget that Joel dropped as well when he's talking about cash and salary cap. The Raiders have cash on hand now. So now they can go out and get a big ticket free agent if they so desire to, right? So there could be a guy that they've got to give a big signing bonus that they can do now. Before in the past, they didn't have that cash in hand. They do. And, they also have this extra $10 million in cap space that they're going to basically be given once they release Jimmy G. And now they don't have to split up his dead cap hit into 2 seasons. They can eat it after 1 season and just be done with it. I think that's a really big gift from one Jimmy Garoppolo, who clearly that never worked out. That was a disaster from the jump. That was a disaster from the minute that he was supposed to sign and then meet with the media, and he couldn't because he failed the physical and then ended up having to go back and have a little bit of a surgery and then rehab. And it was never a good idea with Jimmy G. I know I had Dave Ziegler on the show on Friday, and he's a good dude. I have a lot of respect for Dave Ziegler. I do realize that he made a few mistakes, and the front office made a few mistakes. I do realize they made some nice signings. They made some good moves, including agreeing to hire Antonio Pierce. If they didn't hire Antonio Pierce, he wouldn't be the Raiders head coach right now. So there's a lot of things that they did well. Jimmy G going down that road was not one of them. So there you go. That's the latest and the greatest when it comes to Jimmy G and how his suspension will really help the Raiders moving forward. Now, a few people wanted to know about coaches and other coaches that are being added to the Raiders roster. Well, it came out over the weekend. My guy Mike G, who covers the Auburn Tigers like a glove, put out a tweet, said, per a source, former Auburn assistant coach Carnell Williams will accept the job with the Raiders. Williams will be the Raiders running back coach. Well, Williams, Cadillac Williams, played in the league from 2005 to 2010 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and then with the Rams in 2011. He was the interim head coach at Auburn in 2022 and associate head coach or running back coach in 2023. Now he moves on, and he's the running back coach for the Silver and Black. Now, they have not announced this formally just yet, but in all indications, it looks pretty good that he's going to be the running back coach. As we know, until everything is signed, sealed, and delivered, we can't say it's 100%, but it looks like he's going to be the guy, and it's just another former player added to Antonio Pierce's staff, and I really am a big fan of that, right? When Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl, they had a lot of former players on their staff. When Dan Campbell and the Lions started making moves, what did they have? A lot of former players on their coaching staff. I know it doesn't work for everybody, but I love the staff that Antonio Pierce is putting together because there are so many former players now on his staff offensively and defensively. Also, people asked about, okay, Q, well, who's the Raiders quarterback coach? Well, over the weekend as well, Rich Scangarello, say that one fast. Rich Scangarello, according to Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, is considered the front runner for the Raiders quarterback coaching job. He was in the building all week, and a deal could happen. Scangarello has offensive coordinator experience at the NFL and collegiate levels, lastly with Kentucky. And he does. He has a very long resume, but he did coach in Kentucky in 2022. He was hired in February 2022 and was fired on November 29th of 2022. So wasn't there very long. He was working there with Will Levis, and we all heard the stories about Will Levis, how his college career went up and down. So not a huge, fan of the potential hire if they do end up going in that direction, just because it seems like he hasn't had a ton of success. But he is working with Caleb Williams, and he has been working with Caleb Williams in preparation for the draft. So take that for what you want. So that's really what it boils down to when it comes to the coaching staff as they're set up right now for the silver and black. We'll get into franchise tag players as tomorrow through March 5th, teams can designate franchise or transition players. We'll go over that coming up on tomorrow's show. But that's all I got for you for news and notes of the day. Coming up in segment number 2, going to get into what Luke Getsy, the Raiders offensive coordinator, had to say on Friday during his media session by way of Zoom. We'll do that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we do that, though, I do want to get to the title sponsor, which is FanDuel. And we know the NFL season is over. It is all about basketball now. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. And really, over the weekend, you could have made a lot of bets, especially with the all-star activities that were going on. A lot of different prop bets were out there to be had that had to do with the NBA All-Star game. But there's all kind of different ways that you could bet on NBA players and your teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and a whole lot more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on and shoot your shot. FanDuel is the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. I want you to hear from Offensive Coordinator Luke Getsy. First time we had an opportunity to catch up with him and speak with him on Friday. And on Friday's show, I said there was a couple things I wanted to make sure I come out of that Zoom call with a little bit more knowledge of. 1, his offensive philosophy. 2, what did you learn from your experience in Chicago as a first-time play caller? And then 3, what attracted you to the job with Antonio Pierce and the Raiders? Those were the 3 must. Now, there was more things that I wanted to ask, of course, but being on a Zoom call, you know that you're not going to get as much time as you would in a normal media-type session, right? One where we're all in person, and he's at the podium, and we're sitting there at our desk, and, we're able to ask questions as much as we want. The Zooms are a little bit different. They call on you. It's a different type setting, but it was our first opportunity to catch up with offensive coordinator Luke Getsy. So there's about 5 or 6 different sound bites I want you to hear. We'll go over the 3 that I specifically pointed out, but we'll also go over a couple more. So off top, here's Luke Getsy talking about what drew him to the Raiders job, because remember, he interviewed with the Saints. He had an opportunity to be their offensive coordinator. He interviewed pretty intensely with the Patriots, could have been their offensive coordinator, but he decided, even after being the second choice, that the Raiders were the best fit for him. Why? What attracted him to the Raiders job?
I've been fortunate to be a part of 2 other organizations that have that tradition and history, and it's just something that resonates in me. I grew up in Pittsburgh, so obviously as growing up and the Steeler Raider rivalry and all the cool stuff that's happened between these two organizations. So there's just always been a really cool respect that I've always had for the Raiders growing up. So that's the starting point, to why you ever would want to be in the silver and black. And then you get the opportunity to get here, and I came on the interview and got to not just meet AP, but everybody in this building. Something that's really important to me are the people. Everywhere I've been, I've really tried to connect to everybody in the building, not just stick on that football side. And I love the flow of this new building and how you're able to do that. You're able to be a part of all this thing, because we're in this together. This isn't just about me or one player or anything. This is the entire organization going to win. And I just think it's really cool how they set this thing up to where we can all connect. And it was obvious as soon as I walked in the building how important this family atmosphere is, and so I was really drawn to it.
So there's Luke Getsy just talking about what attracted him to the Raiders job, and of course he cites the history, and that's something that everyone talks about when it comes to the Raiders. It's always the history of the team, right? Just everything that they've meant to the NFL. And that's cool. I think that's really cool that the Raiders are a team that can do that, because every team can't say that. Every team can't say, well, the historical value in the league. No, the Jaguars don't have historical value. Right? I mean, even the Saints, even though, everything that happened really well with them after Katrina, and that was a hell of a story, even them, they don't have that kind of, sway with NFL history. They're not that team, right? The Patriots obviously have some history, but there's certain teams, the team he came from, the Bears, that's a historical team. But I always like that when folks look at the Raiders and recognize the history and what it means to be a Raider. So Luke Getsy obviously leaning into that. The next question that was presented to him was on if he had met Antonio Pierce before, and then what their shared vision of the offense was. And that was really what I was more focused in on. I wasn't really worried if they had met before. I just want to know the vision of the offense. Here's Luke Getsy responding to that.
I had not met AP prior to that interview. But it was evident, like I said, when I walked in, and the energy, the enthusiasm that he brings to work every single day was just something I was attracted to right away. And as you talk about the vision of the offense, I mean, you always have to play into the players that you have, and your best players got to be the one shining on Sunday. And so it's always about finding what everybody does best, and finding cool and unique ways to emphasize every week, and we're always going to start with top down the mentality that we're going to bring. I mean, that's going to be evident. I use that phrase. We want as an offense, we want everyone to feel our film. We don't just want them to see it, and that's going to be a big part of it. And I think that's where AP and I really hit off.
So that he's not going to give you all the details and just roll out the whole game plan of, okay, this is how we're going to attack defenses. That, but you start to get an idea of where he's going and how he, feels, and kind of the conversations that AP and him had. And, something that he references quite a bit on multiple sound bites and just in the whole media session in general is the energy. AP's energy, the energy in the building, and the fact that, he wants to be a part of that. So the first question I asked was what he learned in Chicago as a first-time offensive coordinator, and how that could translate to what he brings to the Raiders now in his second stint as an OC.
Yeah, I mean, experience is like the best thing you can get, right? We talk about with quarterbacks all the time, like you getting on that game film, there's nothing like it. And that game experience gives you the most to grow from. And it's the same thing with me, every game I found my way. I found my way to get through the process a little bit cleaner each and every week. And from season 1 to season 2, and the way that we were able to help those guys, in season 2, the guys like DJ and Cole have the best seasons of their career. Like that's something that was a really cool thing that we were able to do and continue to grow there. And it's always about getting better every single day, right? So whether it's in the upstairs as an offensive staff, or whether it's when you're with your players, everything is always about getting better every single day, and being able to stick to that and hold true to that was something that I was really proud of.
I think that's a very important question, because he's got to learn. Right? I mean, he didn't have a very balanced offense when they were in Chicago. He was, very good when it came to the run game, very bad when it came to the passing game. So he's got to find a way to balance that out. He's got to find a way to be able to use the players to the best of their ability. One of his big knocks was, he didn't use Justin Fields to the best of his ability. He's got to be able to use the players. That was one of my big complaints about the Raiders offense in 2023 in general. How do you have all these weapons and you only average not even 20 points a game? How do you not get the most out of those dudes? Because you had absolute dudes on the offensive side of the ball, and they just didn't get the most of it. They weren't able to maximize their abilities. So that is something big. He's got to be able to learn from the mistakes that he made in Chicago and continue to grow and translate that to a very talented offense with the Raiders. Just got a couple more sound bites from Luke Getsy, Raiders offensive coordinator, who we met with on Friday by way of Zoom. One question, and this was asked by Vic Tafer, I thought was a really good question from The Athletic. He asked him what his impression of this year's quarterback class is, something we've talked a lot about here on the show.
Yeah, it's obviously an impressive one, right? I think there's a lot of different flavors, and I think it'll be. I'm going to have a lot of fun diving into it. I haven't gotten to that point where I could give you the evaluation on each guy, but I think that watching from afar, as watching that college football season, I think that this is a pretty cool year. There's a lot of different styles of guys and a lot of success that they've had in college. So I'm excited to get down into that stuff.
So he wasn't, again, going to reveal too much, right? Just, hey, I'm looking forward to deep diving into all these quarterbacks, right? There's a lot of different varieties of quarterbacks, which there is. That's the good thing about it. There's so many different flavors of Kool-Aid out there, I should say, right? I mean, from Caleb Williams to Drake May, you've obviously got Jaden Daniels, you've got Michael Penix, you've got Bo Nix, you've got J.J. McCarthy. I mean, there's plenty of different quarterbacks to choose. Those are just guys that are all eligible and available, I believe, in the first round, let alone other quarterbacks that are going to be available throughout the course of, of the draft. So there's so many different options. And I remember last season, there was a lot of options as well, but there was none that you just thought were, okay, these are top tier guys, right? We all knew about Bryce Young. We knew about C.J. Stroud. We had questions about Anthony Richardson, but we felt like, well, he's very athletic, so we'll see. Obviously, Will Levis was part of that conversation. But you see where the Raiders got Aiden O'Connell, round 4, right? And I remember specifically being at the owners' meetings in Phoenix and Josh McDaniels rattling off about, 6 or 7 different quarterback names, and Aiden O'Connell was one of the top ones that he rattled off. And you see where they got him in the 4th round. And so obviously there's a lot of different flavors of Kool-Aid going around when it comes to the quarterbacks in this year's draft. So is there a quarterback that fits his system better that he wants to run? Of course, he's not going to give us the full answer, but he'll give us a little bit of a peek behind the scenes. So here's Getsy on if there's a quarterback that fits better in the system that he wants to run with the Raiders.
Yeah, there's not one in particular, man. I think anytime that you can get as many good players on your football team as possible, you can't. I don't think it ever helps anybody to box yourself into a corner with it. They have to be this exact thing. I mean, I think you got to play into the players that you have and the things that they do really well. And I think that's what's cool about this draft. Like we talked about, there's a lot of different types of guys, and it's about who can do things, to the level that's a difference maker, right? You try to get as many dynamic guys on your team as you can, and I wouldn't ever want to box myself into a corner with one particular style.
So there's Luke Getsy on that. And finally, that's another question that I asked him was kind of taking that question that was asked, and I believe Paul Gutierrez from ESPN asked that question. But this one, I took it a step further and said, okay, well, you've worked with quarterbacks that are mobile, obviously with Justin Fields. You've worked with quarterbacks that are pure pocket passers like an Aaron Rodgers, even though you know that he can get out and run. Is there a preference, kind of compare and contrast what's the pros and cons to those different styles of quarterback? Is there a preference that he has?
Well, kind of like anything, you'd like everything to have. You'd like to have a little bit of everything, right? And I think, in this game, I think it's really important that you have some type of escapability. Doesn't mean you have to be as dynamic as Justin was, but I think you have to have escapability. You got to be able to have the second chance and create the extended play, whether it's just slide in the pocket or whether it's extending it with your feet outside the pocket. So all those things are really important. It was on display in the Super Bowl, as we just saw here in Vegas the other day. Like that ability of both of those guys to create the second chance of the play is an important part in our league. And when you're trying to go win games, you got to be good at third down in the red zone. And when you're good at those two things, it's usually because your quarterback has some kind of cool dynamic to be able to spit the ball around. Which we were pretty good at that thing the last 2 years.
So I love that answer because I feel like that means he's pretty much open. He's open, he's available, and he's understanding of the situation. What I mean by understanding of the situation is you've got to have, and I've said this for a long time now, you've got to have some sense of mobility. It doesn't have to be Lamar Jackson. It doesn't have to be Justin Fields like he pointed out. But you saw what Mahomes did in the Super Bowl. You saw what Purdy was able to do leading up to the Super Bowl. You've got to be able to have that ability. And again, for all the things I like about Aiden O'Connell, he does not have that ability to get that done consistently. Yeah, every once in a while you might see him, willing to run for 4 or 5 yards and pick up a first down. But you've got to be able to have those legs to be able to do something, right? And with Getsy saying that that's pretty much what you need in the league this year, that makes me feel a lot better about whatever quarterback they go with moving forward. Whoever that is, I believe will have some sense of mobility, whether it's extreme like Jaden Daniels or whether it's, just a little bit like Michael Penix, right? Because Michael Penix was able to do it at Indiana, not a whole lot, but he was able to pick up some yards and scramble a little bit. I mean, he can get out of harm's way if need be. Whatever quarterback they pick, whoever they roll with, has got to have some sense of mobility, in my opinion. Don't take the word mobile to mean too much, please. We've gone over this 1,000 times. I just mean a guy that can get out of harm's way, who's willing and who's able. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts. Straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. We'll do it next. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about Game Time. And, well, you shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. It doesn't matter if it's a sporting event, a concert, a comedy show, a theater event, whatever's near you, you want to have the greatest deal, the best deal available, right? Well, the good thing is Game Time has those last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. I love the fact that you can actually see the view of the venue from your seat. So it's almost like you're sitting there. You'll know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your up total front, so you know it's your up total price, so you know what you're getting, and you're getting a great deal before you go to checkout. And you can buy the tickets really quickly. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets right now with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDON. It's all one word for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDON, all one word, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Start things off with Sucker Free Raider. He's calling to talk about the quarterback conversation, especially after hearing the conversation I had with Dave Ziegler that you heard on Friday's show. Here he is, Sucker Free Raider.
Hey, Q, what's up, man? Sucker Free Raider. Just wanted to give my stance on the whole drafting and quarterback situation, especially after listening to the interview you had with Ziegler, where he pretty much said, hey, if you got your guy, there is no price tag too high. And I know it has to be a limit, but as far as that, because I was always in the mind state of, man, if you evaluate the top 3 quarterbacks, and I know you might have your favorite or whatever, but if you feel all 3 of them are like, worthy of top 3 picks, then man, you go for that third position and just embrace whoever falls to you. And another thing was when you ran off the asking price of what they gave up for like Trey Lance, man, if you end up in the playoffs the next couple of years, then first round picks don't look too sweet for the other team, because if you can end up from 25 up or 20 something up, you know what I mean? That's basically a high second round pick that you gave up. So you got to look at it like that. Yeah, if you're the worst team for the next 3 years, then you're giving up that first pick, for the next 3 years. So it looks even crazier. But man, I like I said, I would just go up to the third position, tell the Patriots, what's up, what you need, blah blah blah. Sit there and just wait for your guy, man. If you're gonna move up, you know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't go all the way to 1 or whatever, but I mean, I know if you got your main guy that you want, then that's what you have to do. But like I said, if you evaluate all the quarterbacks and if they're worthy of the top 3, then let the third one fall to you, man. For real. All right, go Raiders.
Thank you for the call. Appreciate you, my man. And yeah, that is part of the convo that has been brought up a few times, right? You might have to really be into a few guys, not just one. I mean, if the Raiders want to move up into the top 3, they might have to have their mind set on 2 or 3 guys, right? Or to at least 2 guys as opposed to just one, right? Like I got my mind set on Jaden Daniels, but the Raiders, if they do move up to the top 3, just because there's a chance that maybe a team in front of them, right? If they move into number 3, maybe 1 or 2 takes Jaden Daniels. Maybe a team jumps up and says, hey, we'll give you a big offer because we want Jaden Daniels, or whoever the case may be at number 2. So yeah, they may need to just go ahead and say, all right, well, if we don't get this guy, we're comfortable with this guy, right? Again, the Texans didn't want C.J. Stroud. They ended up with C.J. Stroud. It worked out really well for them. So sometimes you've got to make sure that you've got that plan. And yeah, I enjoyed Dave Ziegler's conversation as well. And I love the fact what he said about if you find your guy, the price doesn't really matter. Just go get him, right? And I know some people appreciated that convo with Dave Ziegler. I got hit up by a few people who weren't fans of it. Oh, well, he blew it. He did. Look, man. No GM is perfect. I love the fact that, he came on the show and we'll talk about, off-season stuff and we'll do it more. We'll do it more. I mean, again, this is a guy who's a pretty sharp NFL mind, regardless of how you feel or regardless of what you think he did with the Raiders or didn't do with the Raiders. He's got more front office knowledge than I do. And so I just like to hear and pick the brains of others. And I think we could all learn something from Dave Ziegler, even as a fired former GM of the Raiders. Up next, got a text from Raider Rick out of the Inland Empire. Said, okay, I don't usually comment on any type of platform, and I've been hearing what I believe is nonsense. I don't think we need a quarterback. The kid is pretty good. Make no sense to get a quarterback 1 in draft and have to develop him when we've already got one. We committed a year in development, and he's improving. Listen, Mahomes is great. He's a great quarterback because of his versatility and mobility. Purdy is great because he is surrounded by the right players. Let's keep the kid surrounded with a good offensive line, create an offense around his strengths. I'll go as far as to say trade Devontae Adams, although he is a great wide receiver. He's a bit of a prima donna. Doesn't really look like he's feeling being a Raider. I'm sure with the receivers we have and tight ends, let's utilize other running backs. We should be great. I'm positive Raiders are there. Just need some good play calling. Get off the scripted game and play the situational game and learn the clock. That's from Raider Rick out of the Inland Empire. Thank you for the text. I appreciate you. And a couple things there. The kid is pretty good. I think the Raiders need better than pretty good, right? And that's not a disrespect to Aiden O'Connell at all. I just think that they need better than pretty good. I think it's been proven that you need better than pretty good to be able to win in the National Football League. And the goal to win, I'm talking about the Super Bowl. I'm talking about a Lombardi. To win that, I think you need to be better than pretty good. Again, that's just me. As far as putting pieces around Aiden O'Connell, sure, I'm with that. I wouldn't trade Devontae to do that. I mean, that's kind of, like you said, that's kind of taken away from what you're doing, right? You're surrounding him with great players, but then you're going to take a great player away. I'm not worried about Devontae. I think he's a hell of a player. I would love to see him stay on with the Raiders. I believe that he is a fan of being a Raider. I don't think he was a fan of Josh McDaniels, which, as we find out more and more and more, nobody was a fan of Josh McDaniels. So there's that, right? So I just think that you need to have better, and I think it's okay to want better, right? I mean, it's cool to have good, but why not want better than good? Why not want great? There's nothing wrong with that. So I understand where you're coming from, but as far as nonsense, I don't think that's nonsense. I think that that's a real need, is to have a really, really good quarterback. The Raiders have had good quarterback play for a long time. Now it's their turn, I believe, to have great quarterback play. Can they get it? Well, that's another question. But I think it's their turn to have great quarterback play. Look, the Chiefs had good quarterback play in Alex Smith. They wanted more, so they went and got great quarterback play in Patrick Mahomes, trading up from 27-10 to go get him. Up next, got a call from Raider Big C in L.A. He's calling to talk about the draft and what he believes the Raiders should do. Not necessarily will do, but it has an idea that he wants to chime in about. Here he is, Raiders Big C in L.A.
Hey, Q. It's Raider Big C from L.A. Been a while since we last talked. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the draft. I'm hearing a lot of people trading up. Should we trade? Should we not trade? I honestly think it's going to come down to what other teams do first, and then the Raiders are going to make a move. Hear me out. You got Chicago, Washington, and New England, the top three. All need quarterbacks. Chicago, we got to find out what they're going to do. Are they going to keep Fields or they're not? I have a coworker, big Bears fan. He's saying they're going to keep Fields. So this is what I propose. Washington, they got Kingsbury. Caleb Williams loves Kingsbury. Caleb Williams, I believe, is from the Washington area over there. They're going to do a swap. Now, that's actually better for us, because here, why? With Chicago getting the number 2 pick, it won't be as a hefty ransom. They swap picks. Now Chicago goes down to 2. That means that value has now went down. Means the Raiders can now move up. I think the words are, whatever you want to call it, it's on the wall, right? Williams to Washington makes total sense. They need a franchise quarterback. They got a new owner. They got to put money into that organization to buy the tickets. And then, lastly, with the Raiders moving up from 13 to 2, I feel that's a little bit more doable rather than 13 to 1. What do you think? Other teams need to make the moves first, and then we make our move, so we don't give up a whole haul. This is Raider Big C from L.A. out.
Thank you for the call, my man. Appreciate you. And, I'll say this, man. I mean, if you're going from 13 to the top 3, it's going to cost you a lot regardless. If you go from 13 to 1, 13 to 2, 13 to 3, it's going to cost you a lot, right? If the Raiders decide to put themselves in that position, they probably can't wait till draft day. That was a thought. I kind of went back and forth on that. Well, maybe they wait and see how the board starts to fall and then they make a move. But I think that's when teams really start to go after it, right, and get after it. And then on top of that, if you're making a draft day trade, the price of doing business, what do they say? Yesterday's price is not today's price. That's what basically they'll say. Well, yesterday's price is not today's price, right? I mean, and that's something that's funny that we said when we were at the Super Bowl experience in Phoenix. We arrived on Sunday and set up our equipment and everything, and we went out to dinner Sunday night, and it was a reasonably priced place. We went to that exact same place Monday when the actual Super Bowl experience was going on. Prices were way different. And I looked at the guys we were with, and I said, well, yesterday's price is not today's price, because now there's something going on. So if you wait till the actual day of the first round, if it costs you 3 1s and a couple 2s to get up to the top 3, it may cost you 3 ones, a couple twos, and a player, right? I mean, because they can up the ante because now they know you're desperate. Now they know that you really, really want to get up there, as opposed to going ahead and getting it done ahead of time before the draft, getting to where you need to go. It'll probably cost you a little bit less. So, again, I think the biggest theme right there, the best thing to keep in your mind, yesterday's price is not today's price. I got a text from anonymous Raider fan from the 530, and I just got time for a couple more. Says, Q, you're a rock star. Thanks for all the hard work for us. Hey, dude, I've wished for a long time that I could let Ziegler and McDaniels know how much I appreciated their work. I know it didn't turn out like anyone wanted, but I know they sacrificed their families for us, among a ton of other things. I know they work hard. If you ever get a chance and think of it, will you pass it along and tell them thank you? That's from anonymous Raider fan from the 530. And yeah, I mean, look, I communicate with Dave Ziegler quite a bit. We send text messages all the time. He hears me on my ESPN show, and he'll text me and be like, hey, that was a really good point. I'll definitely pass that along. I do think that Dave Ziegler did some really good things. I was willing to give Josh McDaniels a chance, especially when he said, hey, I learned a lot from my time in Denver. Clearly, he did not learn a lot from his time in Denver. It sucks that it didn't work out, but, you know, with Josh McDaniels and the whole staff that they brought in, again, I can go back to Antonio Pierce. Without Josh McDaniels as the head coach and Patrick Graham as the defensive coordinator, Antonio Pierce is not a Raider, right? Robert Spillane, great signing by Dave Ziegler, right? Dylan Parham, a really good pick, I believe, in the 3rd round by Dave Ziegler. Devontae Adams trade, I thought that was a really good move by Dave Ziegler. Thayer Munford, who ended up playing a pretty big role in 2023 as a 7th round pick, really good pick from Dave Ziegler. Zamir White started to show his worth last season in place of Josh Jacobs. Really good pick by Dave Ziegler. Like, there were some good things that they did, right? And I know everyone wants to poo-poo on them because they came from New England. And again, I lean into what Dave Ziegler did, and I thought he did some really, really good things. And, you know, I even texted him a couple times during the season, was like, hey, wow, those players that you picked and brought in, they're starting to shine. He was like, yeah, they're, you know, starting to perform, starting to step up. He was collateral damage. If the coaching staff hadn't made the players so, like, done with everything, then he probably would still be around. But, you know, him and McDaniels were a 1-2 punch, so they come in together, they've got to leave together. That's unfortunate for Dave that he ended up being, you know, associated with Josh like that, and it just didn't work out. But I do believe Dave Ziegler did some really good things for the Raiders and their roster building and, you know, a lot more. And, again, Antonio Pierce is there because the Raiders went ahead and hired him, and that was on Dave Ziegler, Josh McDaniels, Patrick Graham's watch. So I could definitely appreciate that. Thanks for the text, my man, and I will definitely pass that message along to Zig next time I get the opportunity. Still got a call from Raider Matt in the OC, a text from Alejandro from the 5 and Dime, Travis in the 619. We'll get to all those tomorrow. We'll have more news and notes, and we'll see what other kind of conversation. We'll talk about the franchise tag, because tomorrow is the first day that the franchise tag can start to be applied. So what does that mean? Well, I'll talk about it coming up on tomorrow's show as well, and a whole lot more. You know how we get down. So if you're at work today, you know, get your work on, do what you got to do. If you're not working because you're off on President's Day, enjoy your time with your family, the little rest and relaxation if you can get it. Until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.